then, when we have the youth standard of occupational prestige in Ukraine, what is the first top profession, the most prestigious profession, and what is the worst prestigious professions, we go to children and create the situation when we ask, what was your evaluation of this? And why different from all Ukrainian, or maybe regional level? And we go from simple questions, why data are different, and from which data are right, your evaluation or joint evaluation, for example, to another more complicated questions. What does it mean for me, for us, and what should I do? How to self-constitute on the basis of this data? For example, choose the professional, and when I choose the more prestigious professional, I will be in situation of more competitions. When I choose the less prestigious profession, I will be in less competition situation, and so on. And it is important because we are in the bubble. This is bubble of our Facebook. And when we have the result of our joint evaluation, we have instrument to overcome the bubble. We see the real situation which we make together. And because it is a very empowerment for participants, for young participants. And then I want to propose the simplest indicators of economic and political self-constitution, which we ask young people in Ukraine. I want to study in Ukraine. Totally agree, rather agrees, disagrees, and doesn't agree. All this is the variants of alternatives of answer and three questions. And we proposed it, and we want to see how many people want to live and want to work in Ukraine, and we see polarized situation. So many young people don't want work the red sector, don't want work in Ukraine, don't live in Ukraine, and green sector they want. And the gray sector is difficult to answer. This is the real situation. It is no good situation for Ukraine because so many young people want to go from Ukraine, and we have a very, very deficit of labor on labor market. We have difficult of work resources, and this is pro-Ukrainian and non-Ukrainian self-constitution by teenagers who had occupational experience and had not. This is in the state, more or less stable situation, not without the war, and this is after the war experience, real war experience. And what we see, this is half people who replaced from the war zone and have relatives in the occupational zone. They don't want to live in Ukraine. And this is without war impact. This is technological media literacy and critical thinking. I proposed you see, if you want this presentation, this is about what is the indicator, technological media literacy. And this is second part. And this is connection between media literacy and self-constitution. We see the more technological media literacy, the more non-Ukrainian economic and political self-constitution. It connects with social economical state of the family, and more higher social economical level family want to send your children in another country. And what about critical thinking? We have another situation. The more critical thinking, the more people, the more teenagers have pro-Ukrainian economical and political self-constitution. Green zone. And what about the indicator? What is critical thinking index? As example of the question. I often notice logical inconsistencies between the content. I usually can spot false information, media reports. I look at several broadcasts on various TV channels to match different interpretation of events. This is about critical thinking indicator. And the more critical thinking, the more pro-Ukrainian self-constitution. Conclusion. Some informational operation are direct on Ukrainian youth to destroy their future image in the labor market of Ukraine. Because if another variant of interpretation, maybe, we don't understand the situation, the more critical thinking about information, the more pro-Ukrainian economical and political self-constitution. Critical thinking is don't connect it with the social economical state of the family. We connect it with academical sufficiently, but not social economical. This is very interesting data for discussion in the procedure of reflexive in the representative reflexive procedure. This is some another image, but I think the last. This is the technical media literacy in connection with pro-Ukrainian self-constitution from low to higher level. And this is blue. This is blue is about critical thinking and about the environment for family reflections. It is the same when we when we have low level of conversation about our experience in family, or high level, it is not impact on the pro-Ukrainian self-constitution. This is my feeling. slide.
Does anybody want to discuss the results? Oh no,
We are now
you're
more
very
disciplined.
welcome. You're very welcome if you have any questions. And there were some results which show replies to questions about pro-Ukrainian and not pro-Ukrainian.
This is the simple indexes. Maybe more simple as we want. But is the picture of reality, and we propose to think about it and to discuss about it, and then the self-constitutions is more rational, will be more rational and more consciousness. Maybe not pro-Ukrainian. Some young people won't go to Europe and work in Europe, and they work in IT sector, informational communication sector, or other. This is the real situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, and now I would like to invite Dr. Shirinkevich for a presentation about responsibility. What does it mean for young people today?
Maybe I introduce myself at the beginning. My name is Beata Krzywo-Szrynkiewicz. This is why my colleagues introduce me as a Beata, although in Poland every 4 years old child can pronounce my surname, so it is not so difficult. I am a psychologist. My main topic of interest is citizenship, but I also did some research on responsibility, and I would like to present you a piece of my work. And I think it could be interesting for you, not only because of content, I mean responsibility as a phenomena, but also because of maybe method I use in this research. Simple but very promising and fruitful. I'm a psychologist, I work in the university, but I also do psychotherapy in the university, in our university clinic. And I meet the problems with responsibility not maybe every day, but very often. I give you 3 examples from last week. I met young people, young couple, and they came to me with the problem of daughter, 10 years old daughter. She is not interested in anything. They told me, we organize her classes of singing, tennis lessons, swimming, other things. We take her to the car and go and organize everything. But she's always boring. She says, no, I don't like it, I don't like it. And if she doesn't like it, they organize her another thing. This is the question of responsibility. Another case of a young professor who came to me last week with the problem. She told me, we live together with my partner for 10 years. We are over 30, almost 40. And we had very serious discussion about the future last week. And he told me, I am not enough mature to have a children and family. So what is with responsibility? I met a young manager who is owner of computer company. They prepare solutions for for small companies like computer system for internet shops. And he employed young man, computer person, who did this solution for one client. It worked very well during the month, and once a day, it was the Friday evening, 4 o'clock, this system collapsed. And the client called and asked, could you do something? My client wants to buy things, but the system doesn't work. And he goes to this guy who did this system with a request, could you do something? You know this system. The guy said, I'm sorry, this is 4 o'clock, Friday is 4 o'clock. But okay, I pay you for extra hours. I'm sorry, I have my personal plans. What is responsibility for job? Another thing, and another cases. My colleague, university professor from University of Vilnius, did research on the student from the 4th university stage, I mean 4th year. They almost finished their university. And there were students of different faculties, and she asked the question, what job would you like to have in the future? And 60% of them didn't know. They studied computers, biology, psychology, and they on 4th stage, they didn't know what they are going to do in the future. So the question with responsibility is a very important question nowadays. And yeah. So this is the question with the job. This is the question with, can you say no? This is the also question with this. Okay. This is the also question with extension of moratorium in development of identity. This is responsibility for others. This is a responsibility for our identity. This is also a responsibility for political issues. My vote doesn't matter. This is only one vote. This is also a responsibility for different social problems, like refugees go home. It is not our responsibility and another problem. So there is interesting question arises what responsibility means for young people nowadays from 2 levels. First, how it is understood by young people, and another about range of responsibility. What space of responsibility is related to the personal, social, local, or global things. And I did this research with young people, I mean 10, 14, and 17, early, middle, or late adolescence. It is always question how to research, examine young students. It is difficult to give them questionnaire because they don't have insight. So they are not good group sample. So because of this, I use research method association group analysis. And I tell you a few words about this very promising method, extremely easy to do, but extremely difficult to analyze. But what is the method? This is a method established by Shalai in 60s, very well examined. The assumption is that we can use free association to assess and compare disposition in different group respondents. Association are indicators of attitude and beliefs. They can influence actions. So the procedure is quite simple because the procedure is that the task is write all what comes to your mind when you listen responsibility or other phenomena you want to examine. And then give a time a minute. And then people write free association. After 1 minute you take these papers and then you start analysis. Analysis is very complicated because this is the special system. Because you get a weight depends on order of the association. There is assumption that the first associations are most, I mean, they are most important, so you give the higher weight 6 points, and last are less important, so they get 1 point. And then associations are grouped post factum based on meaning by judges, and general weight for every category is calculated. Categories can be compared. So there is a lot of literature on this. And I did this research with the group of young people, 125 from capital city, 122 from town, together almost 250 young people in different age groups, and you can see, and these categories were established by 2 judges in 2 steps. First step, it was independent categorization, second was discussion, common discussion, and I give you just example. These categories were revealed, and this association when put to the categories. Close people, children, girl, marriage, men, future relationships, colleagues, further relationships, colleague, collaborators, etc. Responsibility, someone responsible, careness, helping to others, etc. And then in second step, we can of course group these categories in bigger groups. So this is the very brief introduction to the methodology, and now I would like to show you results. First result, this is the range of responsibility. Responsibility could be related with me, with close relationships, with further relationships, and social perspective. Me, these are kind of examples of association. For my life, for myself, for self, commitment, my promises, etc. These are all associations that are related to me as a person. Close relationship, children, girl, marriage, love, etc. Further relationships, colleagues, collaborators, neighbors, and social perspective, justice, social justice, flag, nation, patriotism, president, leadership. And then we put particular weight to this association, and this is the result. Result shows that responsibility is related mostly to the close relationships, generally. This is the highest weight, not frequency, but weight of association. In second, to me, the very narrow to further relationship, but in social perspective, like social things, my vote doesn't matter. This is the issue. But if you compare the development perspective, you can see that this is 11, 14, 17. And we can see that responsibility range related to the person increases with age. And responsibility range related to close relationship decreases with age. So this is the first finding from our research. The second question, what is the content? We grouped all associations in 4 groups. As affective dimensions, there were all associations related to kindness, openness, readiness to hurt others, support, close people care. Subjective dimension, very much related to identity, independence and maturity, sense of responsibility, awareness of self, connected to identity and substantiality, etc. Moral dimension, respecting values, acting according to conscience and the ability to enter agreements with others, etc. And cognitive dimension, understanding responsibility as being aware of the consequences of our actions. And then you can see results of weight. generally, responsibility have a very, very effective weight, and also subjective way. Moral and cognitive are less important, especially cognitive. But if we observe the development of this perspective, that affective dimension goes down and subjective, I mean all what is related to me, myself, my identity goes up, and also moral aspect goes up. So we can compare these two perspectives, and we can see that responsibility with age become more related to me, and with age it is more related to identity. So the question is, what responsible action can we expect from young people? We can expect rather more responsibility for personal things than social. So this is not good message for political psychologists. In fact, this is all. Thank you very much.
Any questions or comments?
You said that your participants were 17, the older participants
No,
were 17.
17. I show you the group. Yes, again, I show you the group. We had 3 age groups. Early, middle, and late adolescence. 11, 14, 17.
17 were the older.
No older, not older. So the idea was examine young people. I also did research on older, but not in the same time, so I didn't present it now.
But do you think that, I mean, when they are 17, I think it's a way, it's completely normal to have this kind of
Subjectivity.
Development.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. This is time for the issues of subjectivity, identity, so they are very much focused on this. And also, we are psychologists, so we know what the concept of developmental tasks. Yes, so because of range, responsibility range, the social perspective goes up with age. So because be a member of society is the task for important development task for early adulthood. They are not in the age of early adulthood, but it seems that this understanding goes up to early adulthood. But yes, it goes up. Yeah.
Is it specific they have to define what you want to study? It's also the society always questions you when you are 17. What you want to do with your life, and this kind of...
Sorry,
No, I just asked the same because of the same reason, but just Sarah said that in this age when you are 17, society reflects on yourself.
Yes, but it goes up, but the space, I mean the weight is not so high. So it would be interesting to do this research in next groups, age groups, because of course the perspective, of responsibility could influence their participation in social life. But in this age, up to 17, the close relationships and me are the crucial.
I'm sorry, Mariana, because of the association. Not just when we are looking to the local things that happening in village and so on, but we are looking at those who are in Hungary, because we don't know, but it seems that a lot of people from secondary school start to be more activated in social and societal issues. Probably it's also, you know, the Fridays for Future, for example, you know, is from Greta. Yeah, it's a kind of testimonial also, and a lot of people are doing that, or the young people are doing this.
Yes, I'm also doing my main field of interest. This is citizenship activity in fact of young people, and I did many research on this in students with these age groups. And in fact, their engagement in social life from the wider perspective is very weak. If you look at the engagement in last European Parliament voting, so the turnout was very high, but the group that the young people of the group who voted very rare. So they were not main group of votings. This is the last result. So in fact they are involved in social life but not in political life. So they very much involved in social issues like voluntary work for different organizations, Greenpeace, etc. But they don't want to be involved in any politics, any action for change. They are very much focused on their personal issues.
And personal values.
Yes, and personal things, yeah.
And not because they don't really believe in the world political system.
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
they
yes.
try to imagine new kind of political or how we can live together in
Yes, absolutely. This is what we observe. This is death of politics. But why? This is the question. Why this is the death of politics among millennials? Millennials, this is a special group of young people. They don't go to bed with teddy bear. They go to the bed with a laptop, or you know. So this is something different, and they don't believe in politics. They don't trust politics. This is the question, and they don't respect any, social system values. They just respect all what is important for me. They are romantic. They believe in love and the truth, but only in their way of control. What is outside, it is not my work. So this is about responsibility.
It's a new kind of energy.
This is new kind of energy. Tomorrow, I agreed with Irina. Tomorrow during the conference, I will give my lecture, not this lecture, but this is small something, give my very small presentation about why new authoritarianism is attractive for young people. So I think that they are very much focused on their personal thing that they can control.
But we will also ask Alessandra about.
Yes, we need to ask Alessandra about. But I think it will be more interesting for tomorrow than this one, because this is just,
and just a small consideration that Anna Maria had a beautiful article on how to work with associations that are followed, because we work a lot with associations, and also the different methods, and also software methods, how to work with that. Yes.
Do you use Shalai methods? Do you use Shalai?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to tell something not about, just disseminating what I've done, but probably we can exchange some articles. I was very interested in association task, in inventing a new technique in which, starting from just one word on the page, what you are doing through the researcher, which postdoc make category, and also, for example, the order of evocation, consider like the order of importance.
Yes.
I try to study experimentally, empirically, if they coincide. Because it can be also that the first word is the most stereotypical. For example, you put, let's say, money and they say bank.
Yeah.
It is the most important or is the most stereotypical?
Yes.
So I made a lot of research on that, and this technique is called associative analysis. But we can share later in informal discussion. No, I was much more stimulated by the intervention rather than just commenting on that, because I was thinking, when I study psychology and clinical psychology, because you can have interest in projective technique, although based in verbal channel, that is already a definition, because when we use word is different than if we use image or visualization, which is different. So I'm interested also in comparing different representation in relation to the different channel of communication. But when I study psychology, your question would have a reply by Piaget, because Piaget said that from egocentrism, the moral development is elaborated through progressive socialization. But now, is Piaget, the Piagetian conception still reliable in a situation of a cultural context in which media has changed the way? Because now, for example, also the definition of adolescence will be different country by country. In Italy, they are considered adolescent now until 30. They call
It's not adolescents.
no
It's
young adults, but they are young adults 40. They live with their parents. There is no job. They live with their or there are
This is the
migrant outside Italy. So it's difficult now. And let's say the selfie, this new, very widely diffused attitude to make selfie with this mass narcissism of to be inside is a sign. This element, this artifact has deeply changed the way in which the moral development is conceptualized by Piaget at the beginning of the last century, at the middle of the last century.
Yes.
So this is a lot of political implication as well.
Yes, the problem is that Piaget never research responsibility. So this is the issue. But yes, these regularities I presented, they go together with generally with Piaget. Regularities. But of course, you mentioned emerging adulthood, what Arendt described quite well a few years ago, that now there is new developmental period between adolescence and adulthood. It goes from 20 to 40 sometimes, emerging adulthood, which is completely new, completely ununderstandable. So, yeah, we have the turn of responsibility, and also Alessandro told today about the freedom and subjectivity and relativism. This is issue for today because the relativism and freedom, this is the question of relativism and freedom. Freedom could be good if it is related to responsibility. Freedom plus responsibility, it is okay. But freedom without responsibility, this is frolics. Frolics is, I found Italian word Niocosita. This is the frolics. Frolics, this is that you can do everything what you want. No rules, no barriers. So freedom and responsibility, so it's crucial phenomenon.
Can I have a question? I don't really understand the definition of responsibility, I'm afraid, because we can say that the new generation, yes, a bit older generation, but also a young generation, like a baby later. Sometimes they start a university and then a new one and a new one, but I'm not really sure in that this is the lack of responsibility.
I don't know. You know, there are two issues you mentioned. First, this is what responsibility means. And in this research, I tried to answer for this question because I didn't do any presumption what responsibility means. This association group analysis, this is the method of, starting understanding such phenomena. You are from Hungary, so maybe you... You are from Hungary.
She's also.
You are also. Do you know Marta Fulop? Marta Fulop, yes, she's my friend. I do this research with her, a lot of research with her with this method, and also about citizenship. And this method is very good to understand what a particular phenomena is. When we, for instance, constructed our research tool on citizenship and concept of citizenship, we also started with this method, and then we reveal categories, what citizenship, what responsibility is. So this is the method to do it. So if you ask me what responsibility means, I tell you, okay, these, okay.
You have created this category, not
Yes,
the subject.
Yes.
So the challenge is let the research participant create their category, and if you, rather than collect isolated word, you ask them to connect the word by themselves, rather than overimpose your view as a researcher who makes the category, you let the category by the participant, because the same word in a different chain of the word can mean different things.
Original shall I work was related not about chain but particular words with a, sorry, maybe I don't know his further research, but his original work was not to analyze chain but particular categories with weight according to the numbers, but also we had the problems to analyze these categories with our group sample because, I tell you why, because of this age. So we did it with a group of experts, 2 independent judges, and we categorized them a posteriori, not a priori. But I absolutely agree that this is our analysis and our interpretation. Someone had to do that. So, what is reliability? Because your question is about reliability. What is the reliability? This is always the question. So we did it independently.
But you just said, sorry, that you want to understand what is the responsibility of them, for them. So why you don't use how they use the categories itself? Then they make words, then you categorize, it's not their understanding of responsibility.
Yeah.
So if you say, you can say, for me, responsibility is this.
Yeah.
Do they do have responsibility or not? I can check it. Or I say, what is responsibility for them? They produce the words, they make the categories, and it's a bottom-up way,
It is good. It is very interesting. I never tried to do it because original Shalai way was using competent judges, but I'm afraid if I this 11 years old, maybe it will work well. Maybe it is interesting concept, but I never thought about it. Okay, thank you.
Just there is an example that responsibility can be that to write homework or something like that. I just checked on the...
No, homework, no.
No, but there is something on the...
Yes.
Where you show that this is responsibility, and I think the...
Education was
yes, for...
Education?
Yeah, there is... I'm sorry, but I have no glasses. But
listen to adults, for instance.
No... Seventh, maybe, or...
Okay, fine.
Okay, yeah, so to write homework, but is this responsibility for the participant, or is this responsibility for the mom? Because maybe or no, or this is just a question.
Yes, there are 2 methods. One is our interview, when we can understand deeper chain of thinking. But this is association. So these are their association. But of course, they are influenced by stereotypes, etc. But as Shalai proved, what Shalai proved, this is that associations are indicators of attitudes and beliefs. So then why we can use this association as a good predictors of behaviors? And sorry, because colleagues wait.
Yeah, no problem. Very, very nice questions and very nice proposal. But I think that we talked about two different objectives, research objective.
Yeah.
One objective is to have some kind of responsibility descriptors, and you check it with your subjects and see if they are or they are not responsible in this way. And another way, more ideographic,
Yes.
it's to see how people think, what they are seeing to means to be responsible. In the first category, in the nomothetic category, we ran a kind of crash study in Sibiu in the time of a big meeting against a law who goes to kill the dogs without an owner. And a lot of people go in the Grand Plaza and demonstrate against that, and they were really involved, and you know, with hashtags very aggressive, and we try to see if this problem of very engaged and responsible citizen activity, it's really at the citizen levels. That means they are really involved in big issues or not. And we try to complete a set of questionnaire, and after that to select people for interviews in order to see what has happened with we prime the older people life against animal lives. Asking what you think about protecting an old person. What you think about human rights against animal rights. And the general answer of the young people was, I don't care. I don't care. I'm an animal life activist. So that is me. So you don't care if we spend 100 euros for a dog or for an old person like your grandma. I say no, because my grandma can have social, and this is a rationalization, okay, social system, whatever. So I think that they are really responsible in a different way that, for example, my generation was. Not so generally speaking, not with, you know, we care about the environment, we care about unemployment, we care about, they are sharp and focused. And we wonder also if this is the death of politics. Because it's not about having a citizenship position. It's having a fighting position in a very, very small and clear area, like environment protection, I don't know, animal life, fighting against plastic.
Very good point. Maybe last question, because I don't want to consume time.
Sarah has a question.
Sarah?
I just, because of what Fanny said, I think it's very interesting how responsibility is related both to me and both to someone else who's taking responsibility for me. So it's an activating and passivating, And until a certain age, I think a lot of people think about those who need to take responsibility for me and not I take responsibility for. So when you just push in an association, sometimes it's my mom take responsibility for me, my teacher wants to teach to me what, and because it's her responsibility. So we ask for responsibility of the other and less we have responsibility for our own.
I didn't do this analysis, but this is very good point to analyze this association, which of them are related about my responsibility, but which are related from others' responsibility for myself. But concluding, I would say one thing. If something is related to me or my close relationships and is about emotion and identity, this is responsibility. But if something is related to further my colleagues, my neighbors, or society, and it's moral or cognitive. It's not my job. So this is the conclusion. Thank you.
Well, what I would suggest to do with the program now is that we have one short presentation about work-life balance, and after that we will have a series of presentations concerning social representations and national identity as somehow united as one entity. And after this short presentation about work-life balance, we can have a break, if you wish.
Yes, we wish.
Because we are working for a long time now. Here is Mariana Karic with the presentation of work-life balance, individual strategies in professional productivity, increase programs and organizations.
Doctor of Psychological Sciences and Professor at the Department of Psychology, Ukrainian State Employment Service Training Institute. My specialization is organizational psychology. In Ukraine, it is a specialization organizational and economic psychology, but I'm only organizational psychologist. And also my specializations and my interest in gender studies and gender psychology, and in every situation I make a report. I always connected with gender, but today I will try not to do this thing because it makes my speech more longer. So I would like to be brief with this report. This research is a part of a bigger research on gender interaction of personnel in Ukrainian organizations. There are some, not maybe problems, but points on this topic in Ukraine, because when we talk about work-life balance in Ukrainian organizations, we need to talk about black type of working in shadow, not even to have a legally job. It's not about work-life balance, it's about the rights of workers at sometimes factories and so on, about paying taxes and some other things, and that's why work-life balance is maybe about the organizations with foreign money, foreign owners or something like this, because Ukrainian owners, they don't think about work-life balance, they think about their money, and even sometimes half of personnel works illegally, and that's why they have no rights at all, not even to talk about this balance. So about this I will say, objectives of our study was to develop a theoretical model of work-life balance. We have some problems with this theoretical background of the research of this topic, because when I started it several years ago, I investigated that there were no works on this topic in Ukraine of Ukrainian scientists, even on Russian scientists, only some works in English from the United States, some European countries, and so on. And that's why we decided firstly to build this model, to determine some content and the structure of this phenomenon, its resources, benefits, outcomes, and enrichments, and also empirical investigated the level of work-life balance in personnel by psychological scale we created with such main criteria. Absence of the load balance, or it's about load balance, work time and content planning, professional tasks complexity, and social intercourse. So this is theoretical background. The other thing I want to say is that there are a lot of work not on work-life balance, but on work-family balance. And we decided that it's maybe not the discrimination, but the not general but specific type of balance, because not each person has his own family, for example, children, a partner or something like this, and they are in very often situations, they are in a situation of discrimination because their, for example, boss can tell something like this: oh, you don't have children or you don't have a partner, that's why I ask you to go to make some extra job or something like that, because, for example, Mariana has a daughter and she needs to go home. And maybe somebody who don't have daughter, has daughter, she or he wants to spend time with some other things, not with daughters, partners, or something else. And that's why we decided not to speak only about work-family balance, but about work-life balance, because a lot of things happens in our lives, not only children, parents, partners, and so on. And today there is researchers use another term, work-life integration. It's bigger than work-life balance, and it reflects a fulfilled, healthy, and productive life, which combines work, relationship, entertainment, integrates a number of activity types, and so on. So let's go to main components on the work-life balance. It's load balance, time balance, work planning, job complexity, balance on environment, social context. I would like to say that social contexts are very important in Ukrainian organizations. Several years ago, we have another research about job satisfaction and the determinants or the content of that job satisfaction, the criteria. And one of the criteria was the relationships or communication with co-workers, with chef, and so on, with the boss. It was the second place for this communication after the salary, or the third after the salary and professional self-actualization. So this social part of working sphere is very important for the Ukrainian people. Sometimes you can hear something like this: oh, you have a low salary, there is not good conditions on your work. Why do you work there? Because there I have a lot of fine people to speak, to spend time with at my workplace, and that's why I can't leave this job to find something with a bigger salary or something like that. Also, it's a balance of pleasure. So that was our model. The model takes two parts. If we don't have work-life balance, we have work-life conflicts. And if we have, it's about resource usage resources and work-life enrichment. So this is the causes of work-work conflicts. We decided to split it in several parts, stresses of professional roles or personal family roles, social support in both at workplace and at home, personality characteristics and social demographic characteristics. There are some significant differences, gender significant differences and age significant differences in the work-life balance of personnel. I will talk about it later. And work-life work resources, that is organizational resources. If it's about work-life enrichment and family and other areas of life resources, if it's about life and work enrichment. And also personality characteristics, and I think that personal flexibility is also can be put in personal characteristics of work-life enrichment. There are a lot of organizational resources which can improve this work-life balance, work autonomy, a variety of job tasks, social support, leader support, support of colleagues, organizational support, professional skills, and improving it then, and maybe have the possibility to improve the professional skills. Direct and long-term results of the job, because absence of direct and long-term results, positive results of somebody's job led to very low level of job satisfaction, and maybe we can talk about unsatisfied situation. And other psychological, physical, social, and material resources of the working environment. And what about family and other areas of life resources? It's family support, partner, support of friends, relationships, satisfaction, some social activity, other physical, psychological, social, and other resources. And so we have our inventory, which based on 16 statements, divided into the following 4 groups. Absence of the load balance, work time and content planning, professional tasks complexity, and social intercourse. And the study has got professionals from different fields of activity. There are a lot of them. And what about the results? So, as you can see, the level of work-life balance in Ukraine and is low, especially in work planning. We have such a difficult socio-economic situation. We can't plan for a long period of time to something, because we don't know what it will happen, not maybe tomorrow, but in a few months, or after elections to the parliament, for example. We'll have the elections to the parliament on the 21st of July, and everybody sit and wait. What will happen with Prima or with our economy, with the prime minister, and so on. And even in the small enterprises and small organizations, it's important to we depend on the political situation. Our economy depends on political situation. And that's why we can't have a plan for example, for a year. But the level of social support is high. Professional tasks is something like in the middle situation, and work and content planning also. And what about the social intercourse component? What does it mean? It's friendly relations with co-workers, the support of a manager, the absence of the sense of loneliness at the workplace, and satisfaction with socializing. So they have got the high scores. And therefore the social and communication components, interactions with the manager, with co-workers, are the most balanced ones and have been most positively assessed by the participants. And we also found significant gender and age differences in balance in personnel. But what about the gender differences? It's only about business trip, male, have more possibilities to go to some business trips, and women have to need to care the children. In Ukraine, we have more traditional roles and stereotypes about who have to care of children, of the house, of some of this, and that's why they're maybe the only one thing in gender differences. And what about age differences in balance? The oldest personnel have some problems with this social support on their workplace, and this is a problem because it's the time of preparing for going to retire, and retiring in Ukraine it's a difficult situation because of the very low pension. And what else? And also there were some differences in balance in different types of enterprises. Government enterprises, personnel of government enterprises have a higher level of balance because they should lose the rights of workers, and in commercial sphere, the owner or the director or the manager can do what he wants or she wants to do with personnel, with maybe timetable and so on. And I think and the last is about conditions for the implementation of work-life balance programs in the public organizations. But the first is that the manager and the owner must want to have such program and to understand what is the balance, what is the effectiveness of balance for his organization. Not only for his personnel, but for his maybe for improving of his enterprise, or for getting more money, or for being more competitive in some situations. So the conditions for the implementation of work-life balance programs are the following: involving personnel at all levels. It's not about maybe the boss or the lowest personnel. No, it's about all the personnel in the organization. Team approach also, clear indicators of job performance and quality of life of the staff, guarantee social and economic for the staff, fair remuneration, communication and feedback also, and the inclusion of the work-life balance concept into the HR strategy of the organization. And I also, at the end of my report, want to say that today we have a lot of technical possibilities to make this work-life balance environment for our personnel, because we can have distant job sharing and so on, to have meetings job meetings in messengers, in Skype, by Skype or something else, and there is no need to be in office all the day, all the week, and so on. For example, today I'm here, but I have a lot of tasks, work tasks. I solved them in the morning with my laptop and internet, and that's all. And I can be here and not in Kiev now. So thank you very much for your attention.
Any questions or comments? Eugene?
When you present the expectancy of the people and small companies against the public policy and the government, I think that probably Ukraine is quite the same type of society like Romania, or like Romania was 3 years ago, and I started searching.
Maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, not many, yes. But I try to identify of the index for your country, and unfortunately it's not available. And maybe if you are interested, we can start searching some data. I searched data for Romania, and from a few years ago we have the index. And for example, power distance in Romania is 90. That means the position of people regarding inequity and the capacity to accept hierarchy, and that we are not equal. That you have one place and you have a hierarchy and you have to respect it. And in terms of empowerment, we have masculinity, femininity. So if you are up to 50, it's a masculine society, means driven by competition. And if you are like country under 50, means that the country is driven by collective life, solidarity, feminities being okay. And I think that in your country, like in my country, the level of collectivism is very high. So some kind of data are culturally driven. In Romania, also people expect from the government. They say, yeah, we have election, maybe we change president. For example, in Italy, masculinity is 70. So that means people care about what's happened with the president, with the politics. But when we talked about our life and our business, the conclusion is, go to hell. I am doing myself. And probably we need a half century to change that, both in Romania and in Ukraine.
Very interesting. We have the hypothesis that our society is femininity, but we have no data of this modern data from the past 3 years or something like that.
But you know also this category of collectivism versus individualism that were so popular in cross-cultural psychology 20 years ago now, in a certain sense, can be also questioned. Because what happened in China, for example, it was under Mao. Mao is the best example for support of collectivism. And now, apparently, still a collectivism, but there is a sort of a state capitalism where the individualism is so strong because people are pushing and push for productivity. But all this is anyway directed from, political. Have you heard what happened yesterday in Hong Kong?
No.
Yeah. Impressive because, so this category which are so comfortable to us because at least we know that there are society much more collectivist oriented and the world was was much more comfortable when you could identify where there is democracy or, let's say, now I think that this category should be revised because the border of the nation and of the culture are put in question themselves, because it is not so easy to recognize, for example, that America is the land of democracy. Look at Trump, or on the other side of the world there is a regime. Yes, I think that also this category has been in a certain sense questioned, although for us as a social scientist it's easier to have this category, and especially to have a scale ready to measure it. I'm not more so confident about that.
In Romania, we measured this indicator just to have a reference point to compare with other culture. It's not the quintessence of this social activity, but it's an indicator because, for example, in the last 20 years, the individual activity in Romania grows a lot. We have a lot of foreign company, Romanian company, big company, and whatever. But the social expectancy still to be almost in the same range. So having this data in the longitudinal way, we can have a proxy for something that is happening in the field of individualism versus collectivism. It's not all, it's not perfect, it's...
But how do you define today China, for example? Is it collectivist or is it individualist?
I run two or three programs of research in China because CBU is the center of cultural Chinese Institute Confucius in Romania.
Yeah.
And the first time when I was there, I understand nothing, to be very honest, because everything you looks like something. Yeah, everything is fine, prosperity. For example, I enter in the huge shop with gold jewelry. Huge shop means like a mall. And I ask our guides, this is what? So this is a shop to buy gold. Who are the owners? Gold.
Yeah.
Just gold jewelry.
Yeah.
Who is the owner? The state? No, everything is private. Hundreds of small companies who sell different kind of gold jewelry. And you go down, you select it, and you decide small people with the price and with the name of the company. And if you want to pay, you go on the center case, and it's the state who collect the money and give it back to these kind of investors. So for me, it's the maximum of collectivism, because it's not a private initiative, it's not risk, it's not capital. It's, it's like in the old Romania, it's a state right who say, you, because you are my nephew, you can have a restaurant, you are my daughter, you can have that, you that, you that. It's not a capital investment. And for me, the Hofstede index now for China is really representative. It's under 20, the masculinity.
I would like to also add one dimension, because to understand this, we must respect one thing. Are we inventors? I mean, I'm from Poland, you're from Romania, and from Ukraine. The question is, are we inventors or performers? Because we are performers, right? So this is simple. But performer is, from economic point of view, good if he perform more. Inventor, if he more relax, keep life-work balance. So if we are performer and we will not do something with our, economy, in fact, our market, if we don't change our market into a more balance with inventors, we will have always problem with life-work balance. Because we are good for inventors if we perform more, and more effective. There is no space for life-work balance there. So I agree with the culture issue, but if we see on the economic level, so this is the fact.
Economy is a part of culture.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that culture is, you know, the
culture. I mean culture values. I mean culture.
Yeah.
I mean culture values.
Yeah.
But the economy. This is.
No, I just make a note about a very interesting thing that people in economy level, in organizational field, are really, somehow scared about the future, because the economy is state driven. The more influential player in the economy is the state. So small persons, small companies, big companies depend on the spending of the state. If the government change, they change the spending profile. So today they want to build a highway, like in Romania. We pay $1 billion to an American company who built 99 kilometers of highway, and the government changed, and the new government dropped the contract, and they start building hospitals. So this is completely mess for entrepreneurship.
Sometimes
activity.
it's opposite of all the things that happens in Ukraine or in Hungary for at least 5 years.
And at the level of organizational future, but also at the level of professional prospects,
Yeah.
this creates a very, very big pressure, because you don't know if the big owner, who is the government at the end, will spend money in the schools, so you can be teacher after you finish your high school, or they will spend money, I don't know, in the restaurant. So.
We have 5 more presentations. That is why I would ask you to transmit discussion to the break. And I would offer to have break now, and after that a part devoted to social representations and national identity. The break, how much time would we need for the break?
Okay.
And now we are starting our last part of the seminar, which will be devoted to social representations and national identity. And the first presentation in this part is national representations beyond the national identity by Sarvigat and Anna Zimmer.
Yes, thank you, Ina. The structure of my presentation, I would like to speak a bit about threat. Then I would like to present to you a model on self-other relationship to understand prejudice, or how we try to theorize prejudice. And then I will speak a few words on a questionnaire that we started to develop in 2012, that is multiple threat and prejudice questionnaire. And then a small part of it is regarding national identity and the different constructions behind national identity, so national representations. I will present few results and the conclusions. First of all, I would like to start with the question of threat. So we feel anxiety, and then we are looking for a stimuli that created this anxiety. However, this is not a stimuli of the objective world, but the moment that we perceive it, it becomes a representation through an activated identity. And often the activated identity by the situation define the representation itself. And representation and identity interwoven produce the feeling of being threatened, and also how to cope with it. And this is a way of the social representation theory of how understand, or instead of the stimuli response, we have the OSOR, so object, stimuli, object response. So we interpret the stimuli in itself. Speaking about feeling threatened, we started to work with Ildi and Shati also on minorities, mainly gypsies in Hungary, and what means to be threatened, or threatened minority identities. And we find narratives, let's say, two kinds. Those who were saying, okay, I feel myself threatened because of the prejudice that I experience in my everyday life. And there were those people who said, no, there is not such a thing as prejudice, but I don't recognize it, or even if that, it's okay because Gypsy people, my family, how do you say it, he did something to have that kind of judgment from society. So we started to think about what about those who cope with the threat, neglecting or underestimating the threat itself. And then we started also to measure prejudice, and we find that majorities, a lot of time, with the rise of the extreme right movements much more, and the growing prejudice and discrimination, when they narrated what's happening in their mind, they said a lot about threat and fear about the different, about the minorities, refugees, ethnic minorities, homosexuals, or the kind of different, that different are from the more and more strictly normative, normal, or in-group. So threat is used, but it's a question. Threat is used just to justify prejudice and discrimination. There are theories on that. What we think is that the representation about the other, a lot of time is functional on self-construction. Does it mean it was a kind of result of my PhD work? It was about, it's not important who really the gypsy is. It's important how I think about myself, and then I construct the gypsy itself. So, feeling threatened, we needed, or it's a question on us, of how to say what is the subjective and the objective measure, or how we can say that there is a subjective threat when we perceive threat, and objective threat concerning, for example, minorities when they live in a social context with a lot of prejudice against them. It's a kind of dilemma for me in the theory of social representation about the objectivity that we say that it means a lot of time the consensuality itself. However, the consensual meaning construction is strictly related to the power. And what is important also to say on threat and fear, that threat and fear can be very easily manipulated with power, or power can be manipulated, threat and fear, with identity politics and hate campaigns offer identity dimensions to identify with and relevant others to exclude. And what you can see, this is one of the most famous Hungarians in the last years. It's about this journalist, his name is Petra, I don't remember, Laszlo Petra, and she hit the refugees, children too, when they broke the border between Hungary and Serbia. And what she said, it was the moment that she feared that these people are coming and they want to invade us, and I don't permit that they invade us. So it was a kind of threat, subjective threat perception, why she was able to dehumanize even children and to be aggressive against them. So what about our model, or what, it's not really a new or an innovative model. What we wanted is to push much more focus on the identity instead of the target groups of the prejudice. So, and we were thinking in this, that fear and threat cause psychological distancing. I feel threatened, I create distance between me and the other. No, it's also the Bogart's social distance scale, in a way, refer to this distancing process. Okay, so we elaborated what?
Go back, I want
Go
to
back, sorry.
your
Okay.
photo. Look at me.
Okay. What is behind this? It's a kind of consideration that we retain very important, and self and other is ontologically related to each other. So we cannot think about identity without thinking the representation of the other, what is outside of us, no? Or me and the other are strictly related. So we created a questionnaire, what we call a multiple threat and prejudice questionnaire, MTPQ, and there are two subscales, one about threat and one about distancing. It was Breckler who said that identity is the easiest way to measure identity is under threat. But, yeah. Okay, and we created different dimensions. We created existential threat. Okay, when I think about what I give to dinner to my children instead of my future plans. There is the so-called national identity threat. Okay, but, and I will explain later, here we made differences. And then the gender, my gender identity, and the religious identity. And we created a distancing scales. And as you see, from 2012, we had 3 steps of measuring this in Hungarian sample. And now we have a complete questionnaire, the defined version of 32 items translated in different languages, English, French, Spanish, German, Turkish, Greek, Chinese, we have a small Chinese sample, and so on too. But internationally, they are not yet finished. So let's go in more strict way to the national identity, or what we did with national identity. When we're thinking about the national identity and being threatened in the national identity, first of all, we understand national identity as but any kind of groups, as nations as well, being members of an imagined community, okay? And these being members of an imagined community, but when we are looking to the different measurements, we find that national identification was mainly a unidimensional construct with those 5 items questionnaires until 95, no? Okay, probably. And then multidimensional approaches started to become reliable, like patriotism and nationalism, being constructive and conventional patriotism, and the most used, or in Hungary, the most used is about attachment and glorification, worked out by Lucas Plar and Leviathan. And what we are looking to this, the difference between patriotism and nationalism, or attachment and glorification, is glorification, those who are glorifying the nation needs to have continuously social comparison. I am better than you, I am better than you. And this is what we measure in these instruments. What was our question? Our question was concerned the representations behind identification. We were interested what is the content of the nation to identify with. In essence, what is it render the members homogeneous between themselves, okay? What creates this homogeneity inside this imagined community? And what is, even if they are different dimensions, what is it more emphasized by the people? Because we think that if we are going to see, and probably what is important for us is to predict really strong, extreme, aggressive behaviors, in the continuous social comparison for us, it's not enough. It's needed a kind of qualitative difference, okay? And then we tried, and I think this is what I would like to say to you mainly, 4 kinds of national representation elaborated mainly from the model of Gerner, who was a historian and working on nationalism. So when people assume that behind nation, the homogeneity is biological, it means that people think of nation like it's a genetic and biological heritage, membership inherited at birth, traits, abilities, and competencies are viewed as biological and genetically coded. And what is important here is the unchangeability. That means that there is it's stable, it's something that immutable, it seems natural, okay, it's something that born with us. And this natural and stability is render the group boundaries impermeable. It means I born with that, the other people, the guy born with other kind of genetics, We never will meet each other, okay? And we think that this kind of representation is the most dangerous because the coping often a kind of aggressive behavior, dehumanization, and also the desire of elimination when there is conflict. The second kind of representation that we assume is a kind of cultural homogeneity based on values, traditions, language, common history, lifestyle, something that shared worldview, something that it's a long-term process to have that kind of culture. However, it can be, so people can be assimilated to that culture. So a lot of time the outgroups are treated that they need to be assimilated to our culture. Okay. The third time that we assume that can be behind the nation, it's an economic unity. When people think about the nation, that these are people that we have common economic interests. Okay. And our well-being is interdependent. So those who are living in the same nation have the same act. Their well-being is interdependent. So all the Hungarians are contributing to the well-being of the other Hungarians at an economic level. The coping, a lot of time, that means the national products have more advertisement. There are sometimes even state restrictions for the labor as well as for the market. So buy Hungarian products, buy Italian products, because you reinforce the national economy. And the fourth, it was a kind of, it's about the assumption of co-living, a social co-living. Okay, we are living all together with our differences, and we can have institutions that reinforce our co-living or help our co-living. That can be education, health system, law itself. So what you can call the collective representations, no? The institutes that have the living of the community. So we checked this kind of 4 representations with the questionnaire, 3 items for each dimension, both in threat and both in distancing. We had a sample of 1,482 Hungarians. Data were collected in 2017. We tried to have a heterogeneous sample, so even those who are not using internet, because there are a lot, mainly those who are living a bit out of the central parts of the city. So to have different strata, we try to have different strata of the population via paper-based personal contacts. This is the result of the explorative factor analysis, and what you find that in the Hungarian sample, the biological and the cultural were merged, as well as the economic and the social connotation of nation were merged together at the level of threat. Okay, you can see a few items. For distancing, we find 3 different dimensions. There was a cultural and the economic distancing together, the biological distancing, and the social distancing. The social distancing were I am fed up with groups promoting the use of social exclusion. And when we find differences according to our independent variables between the different subsamples, we find a few of them maybe based on education, gender, and subjective well-being. However, subjective well-being is not easily explainable, because biocultural threat is those who have a higher subjective well-being, they feel threatened at the biocultural level. However, there are also those who try to distance the groups that are promoting social